You're not getting any younger, so
you might as well figure out your impact and how you're going to be remembered when you're gone.
Hey you! Yes, you! Welcome to the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast, a podcast for people who want to disrupt their lives for a good reason, to make it count. I'm your host, Jen Glantz, and every week I'll drop a new episode with stories from real people just like you, who woke up one morning and decided to make big changes, starting with small things. We'll cover topics like entrepreneurship, love, failure, and self-care. Hey, you're not getting any younger, so let's make this an adventure. Ready? Today's episode is brought to you by the You're Not Getting Any Younger Facebook group. Whether this is your first time listening to the podcast or you are an MVP and have listened from the start, come join us on Facebook. We have a secret free Facebook group. If you search groups in Facebook, you will find the You're Not Getting Any Younger Facebook group. Over 1,400 incredible, fascinating, helpful humans are there, starting conversations, answering questions, helping each other out, and most of all, just making sure that we are all squeezing the most we can out of this one shot we have at our lives. So if you're feeling alone, you need a boost of motivation, or you just want to connect with like-minded people, go to Facebook, search groups, and search You're Not Getting Any Younger. We're there for you.
Hey, any youngers, it's me, your host, Jen Glantz, back with another brand new episode. Today's show is something I'm truly excited about because I think it answers a lot of questions that some of you might have about how to make a difference and an impact in this world. For so many of us, we sit there and we think, how can I get involved? How can I make a difference? How can I do something special? But we do not know what that is, and we do not always know how. Today's guest, I think, will shine some clarity onto a lot of those questions that you have. You're about to meet Tammy Tibbetts, who is a social entrepreneur, community builder, and stereotype breaker. An interesting thing that you should know about Tammy is that she started something called She's the First, which if you've never heard of it, you gotta look it up. Her and Kristen Brandt started this incredible nonprofit called She's the First that helps girls get education and directly impacts more than 11,000 girls all over the world. Their work has been supported by Michelle Obama, the United Nations, major brands, campuses all around the country, and hundreds of thousands of change makers. Both of them, Kristen and Tammy, wrote a book that's coming out in November called Impact, a step-by-step plan to create the world you want to live in. And on this episode, Tammy and I have a very candid conversation about how she went from working as a 17 magazine editor to becoming somebody who is the CEO of a nonprofit and writing an incredible book that is going to change how people get involved and make an impact. I think you're going to adore this episode, and I'm just so grateful that you are here to listen to it. And if you like the show, come hang out with us in the secret You're Not Getting Any Younger Facebook group. There are over 1,500 incredible people there wanting to say hello and meet and talk to you, not in an intimidating or weird way, just in a community building kind of way. And as always, if you like the show, scroll down on your phone, give us a rating, give us a review. All of those things help me bring on incredible guests just like Tammy. All my love, Jen Glantz. Question to you is, how would you describe who you are and what you do to a person you just met at a party?
I'm Tammy Tibbetts, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of She's the First, which is a nonprofit fighting for a world where every girl is educated, respected, and heard. And I'm about to turn over a decade of experience leading social change into a book. My book, Impact, a step-by-step plan to create the world you want to live in, comes out in November.
I'm so excited to talk about both of these things, but I want to go back to early on in your career. And you recently reminded me something about you that I forgot, which is that you used to be an editor at my favorite magazine when I was in my teens, 17 magazine. So I would love if you could share just a little bit about that experience, maybe even what you took from that experience to help you start She's the First and to transition to other parts of your life.
Yeah, so She's the First was born at a time where I was working at Hearst Magazines at 17, and this was in 2009. So brands were just figuring out how to use social media to connect with their readers. And I became the first social media editor of 17. So at that time, that meant that I was running the Twitter account, Facebook. We were just getting on Instagram, let alone, all the other social media platforms that have come about since. And it was such an incredible opportunity to be able to connect directly with readers and hear what girls had to say. Whereas in a normal magazine environment with putting out print, editors had to wait, for readers to write in letters to know what they thought about something. And that taught me so much about how powerful girls' voices are, how much they have to say. And it really fueled my passion for wanting to go global and take my passion for empowering girls around me to a scale where I could reach girls who, unlike myself, didn't have their education is something that they had to really fight for. So that's kind of where the genesis of She's the First was at that time in my life, where I was embedded inside of a teen magazine, ironically, because as a teenager myself, I was painfully shy and I felt very uncool. I didn't think that 17 or teen magazines were for me. So I didn't even read teen magazines. And then I would later become the voice of 17 on social media.
Wow. I mean, it's just such a fascinating journey, especially because being in that position, social media is just rolling out. You're starting to realize that you have this greater purpose. And I could only imagine that feeling, that moment when you realized that you wanted to do something big and take something global, it must have been so powerful. And, I know there's a lot of people listening who might have an idea of something that they want to get involved with, or might have an idea about something that they want to do to help change the world or impact people. So when you first get that idea, I know a lot of it is just sitting with it and tossing and turning and figuring out what to do first. So can you sort of walk us through what that was like from the moment you realized you wanted to do She's the First to actually getting it off of the ground and starting it?
Yeah. So, I always encourage people to dream big, and you should have an audacious vision. But when you start out, you start small. She's the First was not a nonprofit on day one. It was a social media campaign. I created a video that I uploaded to YouTube and used to start a conversation around this idea of girls being the first in their families to graduate high school, and how that opened up so many possibilities for them, and why we needed to talk about that because 130 million girls around the world were out of school. So I kind of put those facts out there with the inspiration of, now here you can do something. You can have a fundraiser and raise money that supports a girl. And I think with whatever it is that you want to do, it's not productive to, question, am I qualified to do this? I think start with your own lived experience. For me, I mentioned that I was painfully shy as a teenager. I ended up being voted the most shy in my high school yearbook. And then I went on to be the first in my family to go to college. And that experience really shaped how I saw myself and my identity, and my understanding of the privilege that I had to have access to higher education, and how I wanted to use my voice that I for so long was scared of speaking up and raising my hand. I recognized that was such a waste of potential. And then I ended up using my college years to study journalism and learn how I could use my words to advocate for others. So whenever you want to make a change, you might start out as a social media editor at a teen magazine and then wind up as a nonprofit CEO a decade later. And along the way, I've asked myself, like, how am I going to do this? I don't have a business degree. Like, I didn't rise up the ranks working for other nonprofits. But I started with, okay, why do I connect to this issue, and how can I, along the way, do a lot of listening and learning to bring people along with me who together we could end up making this movement and this organization a success.
Wow, I'm just sitting here feeling just the power of the words you're saying, from the fact that a lot of people want to do something, but they just get bogged down because they feel like they're not qualified. They feel like they don't have experience. But I really do like how you broke it down, how you did start small. You started with a campaign on social media, and then you went from there. And I also cannot brush over the fact that you were painfully shy when you were younger, because I was also painfully shy for most of my life too. And I just feel like, when you are painfully shy, especially I felt like for me, you sort of watch the world in a different way. And I'm curious from you, being painfully shy, what did that sort of teach you? How did you see things differently? But also, how did you work on that? Because I know that that's not such an easy thing to kick, but how did you sort of get through the hump of just feeling really, really shy?
Yeah, well, I think if you can think about, how can you be part of something bigger than yourself, it helps you to break out of your shell. And when you recognize that you want to be part of something bigger, I think it's easier for us to challenge ourselves when it's not for our own benefit, but for the benefit of others. So that's one tactic. And then just in the timeline of my life, I went to the same school, elementary, middle, high school, same town. And it really took changing my environment and going to college where no one there knew me to see, like, okay, they don't know that I was the shy kid. So I could start on day one and raise my hand and sit in the front row, and people wouldn't know any differently. So that's what I did. And I actively challenged myself and gave myself dares almost. Like I remember, and I still do this sometimes, that when we went to conferences in person, it's so powerful when you can raise your hand and introduce yourself in a room, so that the speakers know who you are, so that the other attendees know who you are and what you do. And that can be really scary, but you know what? No one ever likes asking the first question. So I would just shoot my hand up, and then they'd call on me, and then I'd find something to say. Because if I let myself debate, is my question good enough? That shyness would creep back and hold me back. And then I also remember in college that, like, first week of freshman year, I dared myself to run for student government, for a freshman class secretary, because I knew that would require me to knock on doors, get signatures on a petition, campaign, and give a speech. And I did it. I lost the election, but it ended up being such a way to prove to myself that you can do this. Like, you can go out and talk to people. They actually want to hear from you, and you can get up in front of a room and give a speech.
Wow, I love the idea of dares. I feel like I still do that as well, and it forces you so much out of your comfort zone. It forces you to expand. And I think that people who are listening, that's such a great way of breaking something that you want to, or even working on something you want to improve on, is just putting yourself in those situations and just going with it. Which leads me to a question I have about, people who might be listening, who want to make an impact, who want to do something different, who want to chase after a purpose, but they are so scared of failure and rejection. And when I listen to you, I get this understanding that a part of you has become almost fearless with trying to do the things you want to do, in the sense of putting yourself out there and dealing with failure and rejection. And I want to hear from you, what are some of the ways, as you grew She's the First, as you wrote this book, that you handled those moments?
Yeah, I mean, I actively deal with those fears of rejection and failure every day. And that's why, like, journaling is such an important practice to me, because if I get it out on paper and I can look at my own words of what is stressing me out, then I'm able to do something and have more productive behavior. It's less scary when you're looking at it on paper than when these thoughts are running around in your head. And right now, everything I'm working on at She's the First, and with the book even, it's uncharted territory to launch a book during a pandemic. Most authors would rely on in-person events to make their book launch successful. And with She's the First, again, I can't have events, and a lot of my donors' financial situations have changed. So I have to experiment with different fundraising models that at this point in time may be a huge success or might flop. I really don't know. So I have to make peace every day with how I'm doing the best that I absolutely can, and recognize that where something might fall short is an opportunity for me to learn and keep on innovating until I can get it right.
I love that. And I love that part of what you do is you actively are dealing with rejection and failure daily, because that I think also makes you fearless, makes you put yourself out there, makes you be okay with trying, which in the world, when you run a business, when you run a nonprofit, when you start a project, you have to get comfortable with that, or else it really just eats up everything. So I really like that you do that. And I want to talk about the book. The book is called Impact, a step-by-step plan to create the world you want to live in. This book cannot come out soon enough. It's coming out November 17th. I need this book now. But I want to hear from you about what the book does for people, because the book is a bit interactive. I feel like the book pulls people in and allows them to take it almost like a guidebook. So I want to hear from you what people will get out of this book and what they will use it for potentially for the rest of 2020 and years to come.
Yeah, I mean, this Impact is a journey, and it's a book that I hope stays on people's bookshelves over a lifetime, because it is something that you work on over your entire life. Over the past 10 years, one of the most common questions that I've gotten from people is, how do I make a difference? Like, how can I help? And the hard part is there's not a one-size-fits-all answer for me to give someone. It really is a personal process of figuring out what you as a unique human being have to offer and what you are most passionate about. So the book walks you through, how do you identify the issues that most light you up or get you the most angry? How do you evaluate the resources that you have? And it's more than money. It's more than just time. Looking at these gifts and talents and unique skills that you have. And then once you've surveyed all of that, how do you then break it down into actions that you can hold yourself accountable to, things that you can do, small changes in your everyday lifestyle, but then also actions that enable you to link up with existing movements and community efforts, because change doesn't happen in a silo. It doesn't happen on your own. But the first step is a very personal process of understanding what you bring to that collective impact.
I think that that's really powerful, because I know that there's so many people who want to make an impact, who want to get involved, who want to do things, but they're not sure how. And I feel like that's a very common question, is how. But I really think that, are you sort of saying, so like when you read the book, people are able to say, okay, well, I'm good at this, I like this, that's how I should make an impact? Because I feel like sometimes people can feel really lost with that. So is that what the book will do as well?
Yeah, so part one really focuses on that, like where you're going to create a one-page action plan, an impact plan that, logistically will help you figure out how to make a difference. But the heart of the book, and really honestly the reason Kristen and I wanted to write it, is to also pass along some philosophies that are really important to take along in your change making. And that involves recognizing biases that you may have, privileges that you have. How do you make sure that you are listening to who you want to serve and responding to their actual needs, rather than just assuming that you know what people need? We want people to be able to separate good intentions from actual impact. So that's the two layers of the book. One is very, very practical, and then the other is more philosophical. And that kind of knowledge has been developed by Kristen and I over a whole career in nonprofits, but it's something that everyone can really be introspective about, and has experience with when they think back on how they may have worked within their community in the past. And I think we had a lot of conversation around that as a nation this year with Black Lives Matter, and understanding where do we carry privilege? How can we practice allyship? And our book touches on a lot of those themes.
Yeah, I feel like that's so important. And I do like how the book is almost split into two different parts so that people get both of those incredible lessons and go on that incredible journey with you. You know, this has been a very challenging year for so many people in so many different ways, but it's also been a year where everyone sort of had to pivot and change and see things differently. So I'd love to hear from you maybe one or two things that you feel the most proud of in a year like 2020.
Well, one, I'm really proud of my team at She's the First. I think we've been highly adaptable under a lot of pressure. Girls during a global pandemic with schools shut down around the world, are facing greater challenges than ever. And, we've just had to accelerate the work that we do with a lot more uncertainty and a lot less resources. So I'm really proud of leading such a committed and dedicated team. And then I'm proud of getting this book out the door, and I'm proud of what it has become. I think along the way, as we talked about earlier, of course there was doubt, and I questioned whether, is this what everything our reader needs? Like, how am I possibly going to coach someone to figure out how they can make the world better when every day all around us it seems to be crumbling apart? But by the end of the process, when I had the final draft in my hands, I was really proud of what Kristen and I had done, and I believe in every chapter with my whole heart. So I'm really excited to let it out in the world now and be a part of our readers' impact journeys.
I'm really proud of you for just all of these things, and especially for writing a book that is just so needed right now and is almost like an individual guide for a person who has that desire, has that passion, or doesn't know they have that yet, that wants to go out there and make an impact. So thank you so much, Tammy, for writing this book and for just really everything you've done with your career and She's the First. And I want to end this episode with a question we end all of them with. And I'm actually really excited to hear your response. So I'm going to ask you to fill in the blank. You're not getting any younger, so
you might as well figure out your impact and how you're going to be remembered when you're gone.
Oh, I love it so much. I mean, that's something that I struggle with every day. How do I want to be remembered and what do I want to do? So that's just such an important thing to keep in mind. Tammy, please let our listeners know where they can find out more about you, the book, She's the First, everything you have going on.
Yeah, well, please follow me on Instagram at Tammy Tibbetts, TammyTibbetts. Follow She's the First at She's the First, and learn everything about where to get impact at planyorimpact.com.
I love it. I cannot wait for the book to come here. I'm so excited to dive into it and read it and just share it with everyone in the world. So thank you so much again, Tammy. And I'm just excited for all there still is to come with you and all of these wonderful things.
Oh, thank you so much, Jen.
Hey, you. Thank you for listening to the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast. There are hundreds of thousands of pods out there, so thank you for listening to this one. You can find the show notes for this week's episode up on our website, anyyounger.com. Subscribe, rate, and review the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast on iTunes so that other ears around the world can listen too. Oh, and join our secret You're Not Getting Any Younger Facebook group, where over 1,000 people are talking about how to disrupt their lives, for a good reason, to make it count. Until next week, all my love, Jen Glantz.